Hello everyone. So I've not made a video in a very, very, very long time, probably about a year and a half, I think. I could check, but I won't. Um, so I thought I'd make this because I want to sort of get back into it. And the reason why this is more of a sort of podcast than a video is laziness, quite simply. Also, I'm trying to build like a sort of set I can sit in while doing it rather than just my ugly face with a shelf full of crap behind me or whatever. Um, so yeah, anyway, I want to. Uh, well, I'll explain what I'm doing first. There's not going to be very much editing in this. Again, bit of laziness, and I just kind of want to ramble. So this could end up being quite a long video. So if you're willing to listen, awesome. I'd get yourself comfortable. To be honest, I'd actually recommend doing something while listening. Just have this in the background, because there's not going to really be anything interesting on screen or anything. So, where to begin? A minute and a half in, I've already not said anything. Um, well, okay, let's look at. I'll have a quick overview of what I'm going to attempt to talk about first. The last year or so where I haven't been making videos, I've missed so much stuff to be commenting on, such as Brexit and Trump, and everything that's in between there. So I'll talk briefly about some of that. But the main purpose of this is hopefully because I might be able to get across better uh, vocally than I can typed when whatever issue it is that's come up that I've made a comment on social media, I seem to constantly hit one particular issue with people that is very, very difficult to sort of get past. And I think it's often summed up as sort of regressiveness. Um, I don't think that quite fits me bill here because it's more one particular stumbling block more than anything. Saying that, as I'm talking, I've just thought of another one, but I'll stick to this one first, um, which is feminism, quite frankly. Um, and it's interesting because the stumbling block in particular I keep coming across is several people who, for a start, I actually have a lot of respect for. I like them as people. I don't have any sort of issue with them. I think we just no. I think they think we disagree on this. I'm not entirely sure we actually do from the conversations. So, and I suppose that's why I'm describing it as a stumbling block because, for example, if I were to say, just picking an example out of thin air, um, feminists are complaining about, say, I didn't actually comment on this, so say, what's her face, Harry Potter girl, you know who I mean, I've forgotten her name. Um, she did a photo shoot the other week, and feminists were going mental at the fact that you could see bits of her boobs in the photo shoot, and how that's somehow like a heresy against feminism. But then you had other feminists who that's very empowering and that's brilliant. Go for it. My personal view on that is do what the hell you like. Wear what you. I really don't care. And the thing, the vast majority of men aren't going to complain at seeing a bit of boob. They're really not. So there's clearly divides in the feminist community, and I mean I know there's much more divides than that. You've got groups like I think they're called TERFs, who hate transgender people, and then you've got other feminist groups who fight tooth and nail for transgender people, even over to the point of they're fighting for issues that don't even exist. Which, to be honest, is incredibly common in the gender pay gap and stuff like that. Anyway, so when I'm talking to people, they seem to suddenly get very angry at the fact I've sort of mentioned feminism, but equally will recognise that there are really bad people in feminism. Um, Now, the first thing they'll jump to is often that these horrible voices, the voices of hating men and um, kicking off about the pay gap and things like that. People who start the hashtag kill all men, those sort of things. These are like this, just an angry, loud minority in feminism. And I suppose that's where I do disagree. Um, I don't think they're a minority in that community at all. And when you just see how far these hashtags trend and think come on. And then you see the big voices in feminism, your Lacey Greens, and I suppose she's not a big voice anymore, but Anita Sarkeesian and things like that. And you see the stuff these people pump out. And God, MTV, I can't remember her name now, the woman who talks about all this stuff for MTV. These are just horrendous people, but they are the biggest voices, and they're the biggest voices because they've got a big following. So, um, I I can't quite buy that they're a minority, but I do completely agree when they're saying these are sort of bad actors. These aren't good people that you want in the community. I agree, but then I think where the stumbling block is, because people are invested in that particular ideology, they find it hard or quite frankly impossible to really speak out against them. So what ends up happening is sort of what happens to me. Obviously, it's anecdotal, but to me, is I'll say something against, say, plucking her out the air, Lacey Green. Say, oh God, I've seen what Lacey Green said. That's terrible. And then these people will come out, how dare you attack feminism, essentially? And it's like, well, okay, I am attacking feminism, but that's because feminism is under this banner of of crazy crap. Um, so where they'll agree with me that these people are bad, they'll instantly jump to the defense, and then eventually it'll sort of circle a bit, and they'll be, yeah, I don't like them, but that's not what feminism is. And I was like, well, isn't it? I know, and you pull up the dictionary definition and stuff. But that's all very well and good, pumping out the dictionary definition. But if the ideology isn't sticking to that definition, why should I care that that's the dictionary definition? Um, it, basically, what I'm saying is, I think for people who will identify themselves as feminists and want feminism to not be this horrible thing, you're attacking the wrong people. You're attacking people who are essentially your allies. Um, you're attacking people who are doing the criticism of what you don't like. And I think if you just were able to detach yourself from defending the word, we'd be entirely on the same side. Um, so when you say, well, the definition of feminism is, gender equality for all. Men and women should be treated equally. That's great. I agree. I can think of exceptions. For example, just so you don't think it's anything crazy, when it comes to medical care, obviously you have to divide men and women a little bit there because our bodies are literally different. Um, so there are exceptions to being treated equally, but I wouldn't say it's like ones then should be treated better or something. It's just treated differently. Um, so I think we're completely on the same side. But what I fear happens is, and I might be wrong, but what I fear happens is as soon as I've pointed out, look what these feminists have done, or wanting to do or whatever it is. You jump to the defensive not because of what those feminists are actually doing. You might completely be against what they're doing, but you jump to the defensive because you see it as an attack on you. When it is, if you do not want X to happen and I don't want X to happen, me saying let's not let X happen isn't an attack on you. That the only reason I can think of why you might accidentally think that is because you're invested in the ideology in some way. So I suppose my advice there is, if you want the ideology to change to go back to what it used to be or whatever, you need to actually try and do that. And look, I've got a tiny voice on the internet compared to many others. So anything I say mightn't make that much of a difference, but I say it anyway because it just might make a difference to 5 people on my social network. And if one of those 5 people goes, well, oh, do you know what? I'm going to speak out against that as well. They might convince 5 people, and so on and so on and so on. Every little voice helps. Now, what I will sort of warn you of is you will lose friends by doing this. And again, not so much because they might disagree with you, but because they're scared of. I mean, I've certainly experienced this. They're scared of taking your side at all because they'll lose friends, and that sort of exponentially spreads as well. So, sort of two years ago or something, I had around 500 and something friends on my Facebook. Started speaking out against some of the, I mean, speaking out against things that you'd think is really sensible to speak out against. For example, I don't think schools should be segregated into black and white on skin color. That's horrendous, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see how that is a good thing at all. And that's where you'd say, like, the regressive people, they want to go back to sort of before Martin Luther King. I don't understand why they would consider that a good thing. But because people on the sort of hard left have said, oh, to end racism, we need to split all the races apart so they don't interact with each other. Me speaking out against that, it in their head makes me a racist, which I find amazing. But all of a sudden, you then see them on their Facebook saying, "Oh my God, Simon's just being incredibly racist." They don't explain how it was racist or anything. They just say it. It's just a buzzword. And all of a sudden, they've got 60 friends who are like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Shit, what a bastard!" And all of a sudden, I get 10 or 15 people messaging me saying I need to apologize for my horrendous racism. Then I'll ask, well, what was I racist about? And they can't answer the question, but it doesn't matter. I've already been branded as it, and that's that. And all of a sudden, your friend count goes down. So now it's like 300 and so. In fact, I can check while I'm here. Let's get this right. 384. Some of which are no doubt bots. And so that's not that hasn't been a pleasant experience, losing friends. And there's some friends I've lost over this who I've been friends with for over a decade. I would consider really nice, decent people, who all of a sudden, based on hearsay or generally outright lying, actually, thought I was this horrible racist or a misogynist or whatever. It is not. Obviously the latest thing to brand people with is a Nazi. For things like, I think free speech should be maintained on university or college campuses. So you should let people from the left and people from the right talk. Which obviously got me, that lost me a lot of friends as well. Like one person who I've been who I had been friends with for probably about 15 years, I think. Um, yeah, yeah, I think no, yeah, it must have been about 15 years. Um, they defriended me over me sharing a video that pointed out where some university lecturers had been really awful in their classrooms. Uh, as I said, like wanting to divide black and white or whatever. And they defriended me over the video not pointing out which university it was. But that confused me because the video does point out which university it is. It's in the description. It's actually on screen as well. It pops up in writing in a caption where it was, and then it links to the original YouTuber who videoed it and has a bigger description. So it had all the references you could ask for in it. So I thought, well, maybe she's just not noticed that, not seen it, which okay, that's fine. So then I posted the links in the description and cited the sources. To which the reply was, "Well, you haven't cited the source. What can you do there? You can't." It's like someone not believing in gravity, so you demonstrate it by dropping something or whatever, and say, "Well, look, see, it fell on the floor," and then them just saying, "No, it didn't." Well, you can't really win this. So I got defriended by them, and then about 2 weeks after they defriended me or something, they messaged me with just a tirade of abuse about it. Um, and I didn't really know how to, because I didn't want to lose a 15-year-old friendship over, well, quite frankly, over just something they were mistaken about. But they completely refused to acknowledge any mistake could have possibly have been made, and that was that. So there's that friendship gone, which then affected other friendships I had with people who were mutual friends, and it goes on and on and on. So as I suppose the last sort of 5 minutes there has just been, oh, woe is me. But all I'm trying to sort of get across here is, if you do stand up against some of these things that you don't like, um, you will get attacked on it. You will get defriend. You will lose friends. Um, unless you're incredibly lucky, and I envy you because you've clearly got good friends if you don't. Um, so I mean, that was a friendship that I really did like, and it's very unfortunate that that's happened. In other things that I mean, I used to, and I still love live action role playing, LARPing. Um, but I haven't done it now in nearly 3 years, I think. Quite simply because so much of that community has gone this way, has become like perpetually offended at everything, and unfortunately, so many of the actual LARP organisers um, play into it as well. I mean, if you just read some of their sort of terms and conditions of playing their games, they're absolutely horrendous and very openly sexist. Um, in an effort to try and be not sexist, to try and appear that they're super progressive and nice, and the God, but yeah. So one of those LARP groups, while they had contacted me to say I don't need to worry about it, just looking at the terms and conditions, I do. When someone has said to me previously, I won't name them, some of you'll know who it is, has said to me previously that if I were to go back to that game, they will accuse me of sexual assault. And they're doing that completely based off that LARP's terms and conditions on it, where they have a sort of listen and believe policy. Um, no evidence will be needed, and I will just be considered a some sort of horrible sexual predator. Uh, Not that it really should matter, but despite the fact I'm married and stuff like that, none of that would be taken into account. The fact that I've not been to an event in years would be taken into account. I would just turn up, this had happened, the LARP would do their policy of listen and believe, and I would be banned from the site. But then, because gossip spreads, especially in that community, I'm sure that would then spread to a ton of other games, and I would just be banned entirely from LARP in the UK, really, with the exception of a few games. Who, I mean, I have been contacted by one in particular. Again, I won't name one in particular who have said, "Don't worry, we wouldn't believe these shitheads. We know you too well, and you'd be fine to come and play." And that is tempting, but I'm then scared if I do go to that game, um, it would affect that game with other players sort of voting with their feet and refusing to go, and it'd financially affect that game and then kill it. I think while they have been exceptionally good in saying that I can come and play that game, don't worry about these lunatic bastards. I think it would be irresponsible of me for that game to then go, which is very sad. But there we go. I hope to LARP again at some point, but it's going to be a while, I think, before this attitude is out of that community. It amazes me, actually, that community, how much of it has turned into this regressive nightmare. It's really horrible. So there we go. So obviously, I am, I'm 21 minutes in here, and I'm just talking about me. But that's the point of this. It's not just for me to talk to you. It's for me to voice how I feel about some of these things, that I just can't do in a Facebook post. So, oof, I made a little list of things to talk about. Uh, yeah, sorry, just to sum up, because I don't half waffle. Just to sum up that bit, if you want to fight against these people, I encourage you to do it. Just be warned what will happen when you do. Um, you will be ostracized. You will be hated by a lot of people. The good news is there's a hell of a lot more of us than them. Like, for example, feminism, something like 7% of people in the country will identify as one. So it's not, a big thing. Oh, another misconception about that is, if you say, oh, look at this hashtag kill all men or something, how awful is that? People read that, because you've attacked feminism, people also read that as an attack on women, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The vast majority of women in the UK do not identify as feminists, largely because they're adults, I think. So it's not an attack on women at all. It is an attack on batshit crazy thinking. Um, when you come across people that uh, we want women to have equal rights. Well, yeah, and you do. You do. And this is the thing. They'll if you say to them, name a right men have that women don't, they can't do it because there aren't any. But, and I'm talking about the UK here. Yes, in the Middle East and places like that, it's hideous. I'll come back to that in a second. But they can't do it, so they'll then accuse you of, like, that's a straw man argument. No, it's not. They'll just pull out these silly fucking words, and that's not true. So I said I'd come back to the mention in the Middle East a moment ago. So I'll do that now while it's in my head. Otherwise, I will forget, because I know what I'm like. So a few days ago, was it the Women's March or the no, I think it was the strike. The all women are going on strike, which, by the way, society seemed to function perfectly normal that day. And I don't really know what they were really trying to prove with that. Um, it was just silly. I mean, especially when it's like we're going to strike until we've got equal rights or the gender pay gap. And when these things aren't true, when you do have equal rights and there isn't a gender pay gap, um, if I was employing people and they went on strike for fictional reasons, I would simply fire them. Um, well, I tried to convince them otherwise first, but I imagine that they ended up they'd get fired. I can't, But I made a post that was something along the lines of, "There's a lot of whining or screeching or whatever it was today." From the most privileged group of people in all of human history who are pretending to be like in the middle of the slave trade, or something. Um, to me, it's incredibly frustrating. Um, why it's frustrating because I wouldn't say these people who were doing that are um, are stupid or anything. They're probably not, or most of them. I mean, I'm sure some of them are, but just so ill-informed, and I find that quite depressing. It reminds me an awful lot of like the golden days of YouTube when it was skeptics versus creationists or whatever. And you could the thing with the thing with that is you could actually have a debate with them, most of them. And while their arguments were deeply, deeply flawed, you could see where they were coming from. It was a Christian ideology, uh, more of a hard Christian ideology, thinking like dinosaurs were fictional or whatever. But you could actually have a debate, and at least they actually tried to use evidence. Now it was deeply flawed. Like, here's a footprint a human footprint next to a dinosaur footprint, or whatever. Um, they tried, and they tried to use the fossil record against itself and things like that, and they just failed miserably because of if you follow a trail of evidence, it does lead you one way, and it's not their way. Um, but I'll give them full credit for giving it a go. But when it comes to the gender pay gap and things like that, um, they don't even try. In fact, there's articles on like everydayfeminism.com um, about how evidence is like a patriarchal invention to subjugate women and things like that. They don't even try, and that's the shame of that. But people get caught up in rhetoric, and that's understandable. So I don't blame them for believing these things. Where I find fault with them is when it's demonstrated to them why their point of view is wrong, why their, well, let's face it, just ideological principles are wrong, um, and they still won't change their mind. They seem incapable of changing their mind. So that's where that's depressing. But so I put this up on Facebook the other day, and again, someone who, by the way, obviously I won't name you. I don't tend to do that, but if you're listening, I really don't dislike you or anything like that. I have no issue with you as a person. I just literally just on this topic, I want to pick at it a little bit. Please don't see this as as an attack on yourself. With the sort of disclaimer out the way, I'll just get into the nitty grit of it. Um, her first sort of response to me was, "Well, do you not think women have problems globally, or something along those lines? Like, do you think all women are the most privileged people in the history of human civilization worldwide?" And no, I don't. Obviously, there are certain places in the world, many places in the world, where women are treated as farm animals. It's absolutely horrendous what happens to some places in the world, and that is an issue I do think needs tackling very, very strongly. Um, to the point I'll put my cards on the table. There are certain places in the world where I think this is such an issue. We should certainly consider military action to end these horrendous things. Um, so no, I'm completely on side when we're talking globally. But the thing is, this women's strike or whatever, or the women's march and things like that, these weren't about global issues at all. These were entirely about first world fictional problems. Um, and that's where it annoys me. Now, the conversation I had on this the other day, I think demonstrated it really well, but to the point of I actually stopped commenting because I'm so used to losing friendships over these sort of things. I didn't want to risk that. So I did stop commenting, and that was really hard for me to do. Pulling a keyboard out my hand is a tricky business sometimes. But why I think that conversation demonstrated what I was talking about so well is when it came to the issues of the Middle East, which happened straight away. I completely agree that these are issues. These are major, major issues that need tackling. And as I said, I would use extreme measures to tackle it. Um, but everything after that was about magazine covers and how women are told they need to look a certain way or or whatever. They were all first world issues. Now, I'm not saying they don't have any merit, but I don't think they have very much merit. For example, if a magazine is telling women you need to use this makeup, you need to be this body size or whatever it is. If you really don't like that, don't buy the magazine. And as far as I'm concerned, at that point your problem is solved. Um, just use your income to better your perspectives on these things. And the thing is, if enough people agree with you, the magazine will go out of business or will have to change its business model. Um, so, but also, I don't think that is strictly a woman's issue either. I mean, you see advertisement campaigns with David Beckham with his top off for Calvin Klein underpants or whatever. Um, these things sort of, this isn't word use I like, but sort of go after men as well. But I do think, and I think it'd be an interesting topic I won't discuss it much here, but an interesting topic to discuss at some point. Do these things just affect women more than men, and if so, why is that? Um, but ultimately, I wouldn't say uh, that's really like some sort of humanitarian rights issue or anything like that. But I think it really showed my point, which is yes, there are women who have horrendous issues in certain places where, in the Middle East, where women have to live in a bag or face death. That's a real issue. That is real scary shit that needs sorting. But what ends up happening is we don't talk about those issues because of fear of, if you criticize Islam, you'll get called a racist or whatever. Look at Ben Affleck shouting at Sam Harris on Bill Maher's show a year or so ago. Um, and the left, I think this is a real issue, are they almost fetishize Islam, and I can't for the life of me work out why. Um, these extreme voices in Islam, again, it's not a minority. It simply isn't. Look at any nation in the world which is controlled by um, an Islamic government. Um, look at any place in the world where Islamism is rife, and it's not good. It is not good for anybody, but it is certainly not good for women. But if you criticize them, you'll instantly be branded a racist for reasons beyond my reckoning, as Islam is an ideology, not a race. And I'm sure people can recognize you could be white, black, Hispanic, or Asian, or whatever, and be Muslim. Um, calling it racism is, oh, it's just a cop out of a discussion. So that really ticks me off. But women's movements in the West, feminism in particular, does everything it can to not criticize the biggest ideology against women. Maybe saying Islam is against women, it wouldn't be accurate. I think you could make an argument for it, but I don't think that's the purpose of the ideology. But it is a result of the ideology. And I think that is probably the single biggest issue women globally face. And women's movements do not talk about it. Or, depressingly, they do the opposite. They say how Islam is a feminist movement. I've seen that many times, and if you don't believe me, just Google it right now. Or how the burqa is an example of women's empowerment. I mean, does anyone actually believe that? Do you believe that living in a bag is empowering? I mean, if you do, okay, but you'd have to make a very good argument to come close to convincing me. And I simply don't think you can. But there's the challenge if you want. But when these issues come up, they're not talked about. And sadly, I do think the conversation I had with this the other day pointed that out quite well. That instead of talking about actual big, serious issues for the majority of women on the planet, we talked about magazine covers. And sorry, I can't find a reasonable discussion to be had there, really, in the scheme of things. I do think it's a discussion that could be worth having. But when you're looking at these women's magazines magazines certainly aimed at women. I mean, some of them are literally called Women, or Woman, or I can't remember that magazine, or OK Magazine, or whatever. That are pointing out, oh, look at this celebrity, you can see her cellulite or whatever. These magazines aren't aimed at men, they are aimed at women. But I think that these magazines are also largely written by women, and if you look at the staff, you do kind of see that. So I don't think this is an issue of men attacking women. If it's an attack at all, I think it's women attacking women. But as I say, that could be worthy of discussion, and I'm sure there are examples that fly in the face of what I've just said, and I wouldn't deny that. Um, but, but if it comes to just to address some of the things in that conversation, um, should women look a certain way or whatever? I think it depends what you want to do. So, like, it came up in the conversation about job interviews and how women are suggested to dress smartly and how awful that is. I think it was that conversation. Forgive me if it wasn't. Um, but I pointed out, well, so are men. If I go to a job interview, I'm expected to be in a suit and comb my hair and brush my teeth and have deodorant on. I don't see any fault in that. Because the thing is, looking good really does help in life, and it helps for good reasons. Some of them are for breeding purposes. Um, as a guy, I'll happily say it. I am attracted as a straight guy, I should say. I am attracted to sort of good-looking, fit women, and I have no issue whatsoever with women, straight women, being attracted to sort of good-looking, fit, masculine guys, because that's natural selection. That's it's not oppressive. It's not, yeah, and yeah, not all guys, certainly not all guys fit um uh, that standard. And I'm gonna say it. I don't think I do. I don't think I'm terrible looking or anything, but I'm certainly not as fit as I'd like to be. Um, and I'm kind of okay, but some of my friends are far fitter than I could come close to being. Um, and I do envy them for it, but I don't like hate them, and I don't think they're oppressing me or anything like that. And I don't see why women can view it that way. I'm saying women. Let me correct myself a little bit before I get myself into a pile of shit. Um, Obviously, not all women do think hashtag not all, but um, I don't see it as a gendered issue. Um, honestly, I don't really see it as an issue at all. If a magazine is saying this is how to look attractive and attract a partner, there may very well be merit to what it's saying. Because I can tell you, I mean, you know, someone who is so overweight that they can't get out of a chair without like a crane or something, I'm not attracted to. Um, and I don't think that's me being horrible and oppressive and nasty at anyone. You might think so. I certainly don't. But I don't find that an attractive quality, and I don't see fault in that. Um, just like if someone doesn't find brown hair attractive and does find blonde hair, or vice versa, or whatever, I don't see fault in that. I don't think they're being horrible and nasty. It's just not what they're attracted to. Um, Now, I mean, I know I've been on the internet long enough now to know there are guys who are attractive to someone who has grown around their chair, but um, that's not me. But there's someone for everyone. But I just don't think it's oppressive or an issue, to be honest. Um, I can understand how people who want to look a certain way who can't achieve it, um, feel put down by it, feel depressed about it, and things like that. They are real issues and concerns that um, and I do feel sorry for them. But while I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, my advice would be you've got to get on with it. You don't look a certain way. That's very sad. Um, but move on. And I literally I don't know what else to say, because you can't change the. I mean, you could try plastic surgery or something, but you can't just morph into something else. We're not shapeshifters, and that's no one's fault, not even the Romans. Just it's all you can. If I could instantly click my fingers and have like a six pack and um, look like David Beckham in his underwear, with different head and different voice. But um, then yeah, I'd do it. But do you know what? I can't do it, so I accept reality and move on. I don't feel oppressed. I don't feel like there's some huge humanitarian issue that needs to be resolved here. I really don't. If we're going to put our focus anywhere with humanitarian issues, I think there are places in the world that and issues that power can be directed at. And sadly, I do think things like feminism entirely miss the mark. That I don't think they're fit for purpose. And I think if you agree that feminism would be doing better if it focused its issues at things like the treatment of women in Islam, or um, the rights of women in Afghanistan or Yemen or Oman or something. Um, if you think that would be a better use of its time, then encourage it, but don't come and attack people who are saying, do you know what, the magazine thing, it's not really an issue. Okay, so I want to move on from there to some of the other topics. I could talk about that for quite a long time, really. There's a lot of issues I think that are well worth discussing, but I'll save that for a more focused sort of podcast. Anyway, so the other things that I want to talk about, and I think I can kind of roll them both into one thing, which is Brexit and Trump. Um, it's not so much the election of Donald Trump or the Brexit vote and what that means that I really want to be tackling. It's people's inability to accept a democratic outcome that I want to discuss briefly now. And the thing is, so let's just take Brexit for a moment. I completely understand people who voted for it, and I completely understand people who voted against it. I think it was a particularly tricky issue, with many good arguments on both sides, and a tremendous amount of bad arguments on both sides as well. But what I particularly want to sort of hit on is, as I say, people's inability to accept the results, people wanting another referendum, or just some really strange stuff. And people, like, obviously this isn't most people at all, but I've got one or two on my face, but there's one person in particular I'm thinking of on my social media who strongly advocates for like a violent revolution to stop it happening, and I'd say that he particularly wants a violent communist revolution to stop it happening, which I can't imagine being a better outcome, to be honest. But also just the shit people get called. So, like, an argument I've heard a few times, and it sounds right until you think about it just a little bit, which was, not everyone who voted to leave is a racist, but all the racists voted to leave. Now, I find massive flaw in that argument, quite simply because, as I've said with some of the things I've talked about earlier in this, the amount of racists who are on the left, who very much will have voted Remain, um, and these sort of accidental racists, but I see much more of that than sort of any traditional blatant racism. And in fact, that it's quite hard to come by, actually, because people are, on the whole, against racism. There aren't very many people. I have met some, but there aren't very many people who are like, yes, I'm a racist. So, but yeah, I do find flaw with that argument. That all the racists voted leave. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think race really played a big role in this vote, to be quite honest. But yeah, wanting a second referendum on it, for a start, it would probably come out with the same result, I think. Obviously, I am guessing a bit there, but I think it would. And also, I mean, that's not how democracy works. You know, if you want Labour to get in and the Conservatives win the election, you can't just go, oh, hang on, no, we want another election until you get your result. That's not democracy. It's so childish. But then I get annoyed with people who are very disappointed about leaving the EU, and I get that, but to the point of they hope the country now fails. I don't understand that at all. Yeah, it's something from the Remain camp, from their point of view, has gone wrong. The solution isn't now to, you know, break all your toys. It's come together as a country and try and work out the best way forward. So I don't like that. And I especially hate it when politicians are doing it. So there's that. But yeah, so largely what I want to talk about, and I saw there's been an awful lot of this since Trump's election, is people sort of basically actively wanting violence. I mean, you saw I've no doubt you'll have seen "It's okay to punch Nazis" sort of thing. Now, for a start, I don't think it is. I think it's completely acceptable to punch Nazis when Nazis are trying to kill people or something. That's fine. Go mad. But if someone is just saying their opinion, it's not okay in the street just to come up and punch them. It really isn't. And I think you've got some very serious moral issues if you think it's acceptable just to attack people for having a different point of view from you. Now, and see, this is the important thing as well. Someone isn't a Nazi just because they've been called a Nazi. Nazis are quite a specific things, and Nazis tend to be very proud of what they are and don't hide it. They certainly don't deny that they're a Nazi. Now, when people are just getting called a Nazi left, right, and centre, and then there's this idea that it's okay to assault them. I mean, that is horrendous behaviour. And the thing is, these so-called Nazis aren't saying anything of the sort. None of those people are going, yeah, let's get all these people, round them up and beat them up or whatever. That is your sort of anti-Nazi things, which so it's very strange. And then you saw like Antifa Berkeley, who wanting to shut down free speech, assault anyone who disagrees with them, and they are calling other people Nazis. No, I'm sorry, I can't buy that at all. But then I've seen people saying that we should kidnap Trump's 10-year-old kid and kill him because of who his dad is, and you are not moral people if this is your point of view. And it's so strange to, when you speak out against these people, you then have people who are, in basically any other situation, are perfectly normal, well-rounded individuals who are in support of just murdering people for having a different point of view. You live in a democracy. There is something seriously fucked up about you if you think that's acceptable. So yeah, that's not good. Stop advocating for violence. And the thing is, I think this is quite important. So if you happen to be listening and you think like this, and you've actually got this far in the video, one, well done. But two, um, you've got to understand that if you start attacking people because they have a different, because they're not on the left, and I know a lot of these people are considering anyone who isn't exactly like you is therefore a Nazi. But if you start doing this, I want you to bear in mind that at some point the people you're attacking are going to retaliate. They are going to defend themselves, and you will lose. Um, I mean, look at America, for example. The people advocating for the murder and all sorts of stuff like that because of different opinions also are the type of people who tend to be against gun rights. So the people you are attacking tend to be the people in favor of them. You will lose that fight. You absolutely will lose that fight. Um, but yeah, you're also you just saying things like, "Well, we're on the right side of history," doesn't make it the case as well. Um, I sincerely hope the right side of history isn't with the people who are against free speech, free expression, uh, voicing different opinions, debate, things like that. I really hope you are not on the winning side of history, but I certainly don't think you're on the right side of anything. Um, so yeah, so there's that. Um, I could probably go in a lot deeper to some of those issues, and I think I will at some point. I'll probably have to put some notes together and make a proper video for that. As I've not done any prep work for this at all. So yeah, consider very carefully when you're advocating for. I mean, to use the proper definition, if you're advocating for violence to achieve a political goal, you are by definition a terrorist. So, think very carefully before um, you start shouting and screaming about wanting anything like this. And if like the one person in particular I'm thinking of who crops up on my Facebook all the time doing this is a LARPer, and I just can't help but think I would now feel a bit worried about going into a field with this person for 3 or 4 days, um, who is just so openly a terrorist, Um, but obviously, advocating to assault and murder people based on their political beliefs doesn't seem to bother LARP organisers. But if you use the word boy, well, you might get banned. Um, so there you go. Something else I think is worthy of consideration about why Brexit went the way it did and why Trump won is uh, quite simply because of the tactics the opposition to these things used, which in both cases was essentially calling, say for Brexit, calling everyone a racist who's thinking about voting for Brexit and calling them stupid and things like that. And for Trump, calling them racists and misogynists and stupid and things like that. And it doesn't work. You're not you're not going to convince anyone of anything by just calling them a misogynist. Um, because the person you're calling it to knows they aren't. Um, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been called a misogynist because I'm not a fan of third wave feminism. And I'm sorry, because I'm not a fan of third wave feminism doesn't mean I hate women. That's ridiculous. Um, so calling me a misogynist or your white cis het, misogynist, whatever. It it doesn't work because it doesn't mean anything because it's not an argument. It's just name calling will not win you anything. Um, so I wouldn't say these are the reasons why Brexit happened and why Trump won the election, but I think they are huge factors in it. Um, all the Remain camp did was help convince people to leave. All Clinton's side did was convince people to vote for Trump. Um, it just doesn't work, and I think that's important. So if and I mean I think I'm being a bit optimistic here, but if you disagree with me on most things and you're still listening, again, well done. But honestly, you need to change your tactics. Um, and this is the thing. I want a good opposition to say the Conservative Party. Right now, Labour is just a piss poor, run down, uh, stuck in this crappy ideology. It doesn't work, and you can see it doesn't work from every by-election they have. Um, you know, the latest polling had Corbyn is only just more popular than Tony Blair. And not when not in like 1997 Tony Blair, today Tony Blair. He's only just beating him. But he's massively behind May. But when you come across Corbyn fans, they are utterly convinced that he's this super popular guy. He really isn't. Um, but the only people who like him are basically the little cult of Corbyn. Most of his own party bloody hate him, let alone the electorate. Uh, and I mean, I don't like him for multiple reasons, but the biggest reason I want him to go is so anybody could take over in the Labour Party and be a more effective opposition. Um, I think for a democracy's health, a good opposition is great. Now I didn't have to go on a side route there, didn't I? But yeah, the left have to change their tactics. Name calling doesn't work. You need to actually come up with arguments. Um, Now, I said this, it was a few months ago on my Facebook, and I got quite a bit of hate for it. And all right, I'm used to that, fair enough. Um, but the very, very next day, Jonathan Pye released a video effectively saying the same thing. Now, all of a sudden, the people who gave me hate, I mean, Jonathan Pye said it much better, but the people who gave me hate for it were sharing the video with like just this with exclamation marks, and they were really happy about it, and that puzzled me a bit. Um, but I'm not expecting any of these people to be consistent. They don't seem to be able to do that. So, but anyway, I mean that was just that was just a bit painful when I saw that. But at the same time, I'm glad that someone was able to explain it to them, and they seemed to get it. But they only seemed to get it for like a week, and then they were straight back to just calling people names and wanting to punch Nazis and things like that. I mean, this is how bad this has got. Someone lots and lots of people really really like, J.K. Rowling. Joined in with calling PewDiePie a Nazi, and there was nothing to it at all. It was just made up shit, and she wouldn't apologise for it, and then doubled down on it, and it just became this horrible bully woman. Having said that, I mean, when you see uh, uh, website like Judge Decay does it a lot. He'll share, look how J.K. Rowling shut down an evil, horrible misogynist on Twitter or something, and you see like this guy, he'll say something fairly mundane, um, and then J.K. will say something with an ounce of wit, and it'll be like, look how amazing she is. But what they've done is cut out the replies, so you can't see any coming back. So it's fun sometimes to go on Twitter and watch J.K. Rowling's Twitter because she's not very good at this, and she's quite a bully, to be honest. Um, and yeah, just anyway, that was a complete side note. I didn't need to go into that at all. I told you a ramble. Um, so yeah, the next. I mean, I've seen people wanting there to be an election now and to as another way to like have a separate um, referendum vote for Brexit because if we can change government, maybe we can stop it or something. And all right, okay, that I'd actually say that might be a more legitimate way of having a second vote. I wouldn't entirely be against that, but what a lot of these people don't realise, they think if they had another election now, like Corbyn would sweep to power, and Labour would be blown to bits. They'd end up like the Lib Dems, I think. And just from polling data and look at the all the by-elections that have happened since Corbyn came in, and Labour are just doing terrible. So here's the thing: if you're on the left and you want to make the left stronger again and be able to stand up for itself and either be a good opposition party or even better actually get in and come to power, be able to do stuff, then something you have to recognize is that the current tactics don't work, and that should be self-evident from how many times the left have just been battered over the last year or so. Yeah, the current tactics don't work, and you're not popular. Okay, so let's switch it up again. Yeah, so another thing, this is probably obvious to most people, but something, it hadn't happened to me in a very long time, but it happened the other day, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make this as well. Was I put a post up basically poking a bit of fun at people who have entirely failed to use the brain, and it's another thing that crops up with feminists quite a lot about like the pink tax, how similar items have different prices. So they'll compare this woman's razor and this man's razor, and the woman's razor is like £3 more or whatever, and how terrible that is. And there's just a few things that I find is a failure of thinking with this. If the items are so similar, they're basically indistinguishable, why are you buying the woman's one? Just buy the men's one. But there's a reason why you're buying the woman's one. It's because they are different. Where a man's razor is just meant to get rid of his face. Woman's razor for legs and armpits and all sorts. And they literally are different. And there's some good YouTube videos out there explaining why there is a price difference. But ultimately, if you don't think there is a difference in the products, just buy the cheaper one. I don't see your issue. It's one of them. Let the market work it out. If buying the man's one is exactly the same, just cheaper, then I don't see what the issue is. Just buy the man's one. But as I say, they are different. I think they know the difference. So I pointed out the key words people were using, which was when they say, look at these similar products that have different prices. The other way of saying that and still having the same message would be, look at these different products, they have different prices, which obviously doesn't sound controversial at all. Um, Similar does not mean the same. Um, so uh, a kite is similar to a 747 in the way that they both go into the air, but they do cost differently because they do different things. Um, so I I thought when I was posting that it was fairly straightforward. It was poking a bit of fun, but it was fairly straightforward. And just thinking about it logically for a second should twig with someone why the argument's a bit silly. Uh, but then I had someone go on there, and again, it's someone I haven't seen them in a long time, but it's someone I really respect, really like. Um, and again, if the person who this was, if you're listening to this, please don't see this as me having a go at you. I'm because the last thing I want to do is fall out with people. I really don't want to fall out with people. But sometimes it seems to be made so easy for that to happen. I am often a bit worried about replying to stuff. But essentially, her argument was that she was offended that I'd said anything. And I honestly, I don't see why I should care. Um, while I don't want to go out of my way to cause people offence, um, it's not an argument. Saying you've been offended by, so I mean, I'm not sure how you can be offended by that, by pointing out that different products have different price. I'm not sure how that's offensive, but um, if for some reason that has offended you, I'm baffled to why you think it's an argument of any kind. Um, I think what's his name? I think Steve Hughes, Australian comedian. He's got a great thing about this, but essentially, I'm going to rob it from him a little bit. But nothing happens. You're offended. Well, so what? Um, it didn't change anything, and no one got hurt, or I, being offended about something simply is not an argument. And that's something people need to recognise as well. Um, Sticking with the offence thing, but not about the comment on the Facebook or about the person who made it or anything. Um, but sometimes it amazes me how people can, because I mean, this has happened to me. Um, People can attack. Yeah, I'll give an actual example. Um, girl called Andrea sort of attacked me on the basis of my skin color and my gender. Two things I literally cannot do anything about. Um, so I was this horrible white cis het male. Also, how much of that is presumption as well, especially when you consider all the other stuff these people tend to believe. Um, but they can do a lot, and I'll come back with like, well, that's not an argument, and also, do you really want to bring gender and race into? Why are you being sexist and racist in this? And then they'll go on their Facebook and be all how offended they are and play the victim as if I attacked them coming on my Facebook, then having some racial and gendered slurs at me, and then they run away, go on their Facebook and pretend that they are the victim of some horrible right-wing attack or something. Um, it's not an argument. You being offended is not an argument. But if it is, how about trying not to go around causing loads of offence at people with racial and gendered terms? But this is the thing. I don't think that these people tend to see rules as applying to everyone. They don't think it applies to them. Um, and you'll hear them say things like, as a woman, I can't be sexist. And that is literally them sorry, that is literally them openly saying the rules don't apply to them. They can do what they like. They can be horrible and racist because as a minority, I don't know how women are classed as a minority, like 52% of the population. But as a minority, they can't be racist and they can't be sexist. No, I'm sorry, you can be. Um, if you are think of the smallest minority I can think of, like a a transsexual disabled person or something. I don't know. If you're one of them, but you attack people entirely based on their skin color, you're still a racist. If you attack people only based on what genitalia they have, you're still a sexist. I'm saying you don't have a get out of jail free card just because you decide you want one. So yeah, but I'd be wary of people like that. Be very wary of anyone who's saying, as a whatever, I can't be a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or whatever. Because I think the only reason why they're saying that is because that's exactly what they are. And they know it. They're just very much in denial about it. So, I do think that is a bit of an issue. Also, I mean, you do just look like a prick. But honestly, something I have discovered about these people is they tend to have absolute zero self-awareness. So in the time I've got left, there's something else I briefly want to touch on. And that is, from what I can see just from my Facebook feed, a steady, it's not too fast, but quite steady rise in people who, for some reason, all of a sudden seem to think communism is a great thing to do. And I cannot grasp why people are down with this. But I mean, it's not just like communism either. It's it's Soviet communism. um, people sharing that they've got a tattoo or whatever, patches on their clothes and stuff with the hammer and sickle, and it's time to rise up and change things. And I'm amazed that, I mean, I don't really see a difference between people doing that and people doing with the swastika. Um, I mean, in fact, if you go on like body count, the communists did far more killing than the Nazis. Um, so I really don't understand that mentality, where that has come from. Because it's often said, oh, it's a great idea in theory, but doesn't work in practice. I don't even think it's a good idea in theory. I think it's pretty awful all round. So yeah, I don't get that. I'd be a little wary of people like that. Also, as well, because they might be coming after you yet, but when if in their fantasy land, when they've dealt with the Nazis, are you a communist? Because if you're not, you will be on the list. They won't stop until they've got rid of everyone who isn't them. And then if the Soviet Union is anything to go by, they'll just start on themselves after that. So yeah, be careful with these people because they have not got any good intentions for you at all. Um, you just mightn't be their top priority yet. I say get as if they could get anywhere. They absolutely could. I mean, Christ, look at the fuckers. Um, I mean, these are the same people who are deeply traumatized and hurt because someone used a male pronoun or something. These aren't people who are going to have a revolution and take over the country or the world or anything like that. But they think they are. They imagine themselves to be able to do this, and would like nothing more than having the opportunity. Um, so they're something to watch. Now I've only got a few minutes left that I want to dedicate to this, and obviously this has been a long podcast. I'm gonna do more in the future with a lot more focus, and I'll do more research into so I'm not umming and ahhing over a few bits and bobs. This podcast has literally just been for me to sort of get back on the horse, as it were, doing these sort of things, and for me to just vocalize some of me worries, I think. But if you've listened, so far, thank you very much. I've still got a few minutes that I've scheduled in for this, so I will be rambling just for a few more minutes. But if you have any suggestions, or if there's any particular topics you want me to try and tackle, do let me know. Either put it in the comments preferably on YouTube, rather than on my Facebook. Um, quite because it just helps. With the YouTube algorithm is all, where it doesn't really assist me at all on Facebook. What do I want to do in my last few minutes? Well, I think if I just sort of summarise dead quick what the last hour and a half or so has essentially been about. While I do have many worries about many issues, my primary worry at the moment, my primary goal at the moment is actually, in a way, helping people who might disagree with me in the future. And basically, so what I've been really trying to get across is just name calling doesn't work. It's not an argument. Um, and if that's all you've got, you don't have another argument, you might be wrong. Or dumb. So yeah, there's that. Also, and this is a big one, know what it is that you're actually attacking. So when, as I said at the beginning of this, if you can if you're a feminist and you recognize that there's a lot of bad actors in feminism, there's a lot of really shitty behavior in there, attacking the people pointing that out isn't helping you. Because essentially, if you actually agree with the attack, if you think, well, yeah, hashtag kill all men or whatever isn't productive and it's not good and it just shows themselves to be sexists, if they are appearing to be what they are claiming they are fighting against, that's not very good. Then if you're going to attack anything, can I suggest attacking that so you can sort of reclaim what feminism is or whatever? Because that's really all I tend to see happening. Is people who agree that something's gone horribly wrong in that community, but only attacking people who are pointing it out. So yeah, pick your targets better, make better argument. Well, I mean, having an argument at all would be a nice start, but have much better arguments. And saying things like, "Well, I'm offended by that," isn't an argument. No one really should respect that, to be honest. But as I say, I don't tend to go out of my way to offend people. That's not my goal in anything. Um, but obviously, I'm going to offend people with some of these things. I mean, if you are particularly invested in an ideology, whether it be feminism or Christianity, or if you've got a particular love for Corbyn or something like that, I understand that you're going to be offended if I say, well, do you know what, I don't think Corbyn's very good, or um, feminism has become horribly sexist or whatever. Yeah, I can understand you're going to be offended, but it's not an argument to say that you're offended. If you think Corbyn's great, then demonstrate it, show it. Um, but in the age of the internet and stuff, be careful when you're arguing with people about these things, because you know you're gonna need data on your side, because people can instantly search and fact check you, and uh, I do find it amazing how often people will assert something that they could have just fact checked within seconds, and they're completely wrong about whatever it is, and then can't accept it. And that's the other thing as well. If you are wrong about something, and I know it's hard to do, but you need to be able to recognize that and change your mind. Um, it can be embarrassing to change your mind and uh, start thinking differently about a particular topic, or whatever. But you look worse. It should be more embarrassing for you to maintain a belief in something that's demonstrably untrue. Uh, so look, that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Obviously, there's been no structure to this. I have waffled away. Uh, Thank you for listening. If you have, as I say, leave a comment or whatever if you've got any suggestions. Uh, or if you think I've been horribly wrong about something, point it out, and I'll examine it and have a look see. Um, okay, I don't know how often I'm going to do these. I'm going to try for about once a week, but don't hold me to that just yet. And yeah, we'll see how we go. All right. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and I hope you leave a comment so I know what the hell to talk about next time. Bye.